Sienna spent 4 years working double shifts to protect the $50,000 tuition trust her late mother left behind, only to watch her stepmother drain it for a spiritual healing retreat. But when Sienna tracked the GPS on the wellness photos, she realized the only thing her stepmother was healing was her relationship with an old flame at a luxury resort. Now, Sienna isn't just seeking a refund, she's orchestrating a total family eviction that will leave her stepmother with nothing but a court date. But don't take my word for it. Here is Sienna's story in her own words. My name is Sienna, and for the last 4 years, I've been a ghost in my own home. You know the type. The daughter who fades into the background so the adults can pretend everything is perfect. When my mom, Elena, died 4 years ago, it wasn't just a loss. It was an earthquake. She was the heart of our house, the one who kept the books, the one who made sure the bills were paid and the future was secure. My dad, Robert, didn't just grieve. He disintegrated. That's when Kimberly arrived. She didn't walk into our lives. She descended like a vulture dressed in Lululemon. I was 15, terrified, and desperate to see my dad smile again. So when he brought her home only 6 months after the funeral, I swallowed my pride. I welcomed her with a forced grin because I thought a stepmother was better than a broken father. I became the perfect child to make up for his pain. While Kimberly was out getting $400 Botox injections and energy-cleansing crystals, I was the one doing the grocery shopping. I was the one who made sure the laundry was folded and the dinner was on the table by 6 p.m. I worked as a night shift pharmacy technician, coming home at 3 a.m. with stinging eyes, only to wake up 4 hours later to maintain my 4.0 GPA. I wasn't just a student. I was a biomed hopeful with a dream of becoming a surgeon. The only thing that kept me going during those 18-hour days was the Elena Vance Memorial Trust. It was $50,000. It wasn't a fortune to some, but to me, it was my mother's voice from the grave telling me, "You're going to be someone, Sienna." It was locked until my 19th birthday. I never asked my dad for money. I never asked Kimberly for a thing. I thought that if I stayed invisible and handled everything myself, my mother's legacy would remain untouched. I thought my silence was my protection. I was wrong. Life with Kimberly was a constant lesson in psychological warfare. She had this way of making you feel like a guest in your own skin. By the time I turned 18, the power dynamic in our house had shifted completely. My dad, Robert, was a peace at any price kind of man. He worked long hours as a civil engineer, and when he came home, he just wanted to sink into the sofa and pretend his life hadn't been hollowed out. Kimberly knew exactly how to use that exhaustion to her advantage. She was a professional taker. I remember one specific Saturday when I was exhausted, having just finished a double shift at the pharmacy. I had saved up exactly $200 of my own hard-earned money for my freshman year dorm supplies, linens, a decent laptop, things my dad shouldn't have to worry about. Kimberly walked into my room, not even knocking, and started borrowing my favorite leather jacket, a gift from my mom. When I told her no, she didn't get angry. She just sighed and said, "Sienna, after all I've done to keep this family together while you've been too busy with school, I thought we were past such selfishness." That was her move. The guilt trip wrapped in a velvet glove. A week later, she convinced my dad that our perfectly functional kitchen was holding on to negative, stagnant energy. She pressured him into a $15,000 remodel. For months, our house was a construction zone of dust and exposed wires. But here's the thing. The contractors stopped showing up after 2 weeks. Kimberly claimed they were unprofessional and fired them, but the money was gone. The kitchen remained a skeleton of what it used to be, yet Kimberly suddenly had a new collection of designer handbags. I watched her drain my father's spirit and his savings account, but I told myself it didn't matter. I just had to hold on until I turned 19. The trust was separate. It was in a high-yield account with my mother's name still on the title alongside mine. It was the one thing Kimberly couldn't touch, or so I believed. I stayed in my lane, tutoring her younger brother for free and keeping my head down, counting the days until that $50,000 would set me free. The morning of the betrayal started out like any other. I woke up at 6:01 a.m., my heart racing with a different kind of adrenaline. It was my 19th birthday, the day the Elena Vance Memorial Trust finally belonged to me. I didn't want a party. I didn't even want a cake. I just wanted to go to the bank, see that number on the screen, and wire my tuition deposit to Stanford. It was the finish line of a 4-year marathon. I walked into the First National Bank at 9:15 a.m. The air-conditioned chill felt like a hug. Mrs. Gable, a teller who had been best friends with my mom since high school, waved me over to her window. "Happy birthday, Sienna," she said, her smile warm and genuine. "I know exactly why you're here. Your mom would be so proud of you." I beamed, handing over my ID. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I'm ready to send the deposit. $12,000 for the first semester, please." I watched her screen. I saw her fingers fly across the keys, and then I saw her face drop. The color drained from her cheeks so fast I thought she was having a stroke. She clicked the mouse a few more times, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Sienna, honey, did you make a large withdrawal recently, or maybe your father?" "No," I said, my voice suddenly sounding small in the vast lobby. "It's a locked trust, only I can access it today." Mrs. Gable turned the monitor toward me. My vision blurred for a second. The balance wasn't $50,000. It wasn't even $5,000. It was $84.30. I felt the floor tilt. I scrolled through the transaction history with shaking hands. 5 separate transfers of $10,000 each, all made over the last 90 days. Every single one of them went to a company called Ascended Solace LLC. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't wait. I drove home like a woman possessed, the tires screeching as I pulled into the driveway. I burst through the front door and found them in the living room, Dad reading the paper, Kimberly sipping an expensive green juice. "Where is it?" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Where is my mother's money?" Kimberly didn't even flinch. She set her juice down and looked at my dad, her eyes welling up with practiced tears. "Robert, I told you she wasn't ready to know. She's so high-strung." Then she turned to me, her voice dripping with fake empathy. "Sienna, I had a total spiritual collapse 3 months ago. I was in a dark place, honey. I used the fund for an intensive trauma retreat in the mountains. It was the only way to save my soul so I could keep being a mother to you. Surely you understand that my life is worth more than a textbook?" I looked at my father, expecting him to be outraged. Instead, he reached out and squeezed Kimberly's hand. "Sienna, please. Money is just paper. Kimberly's mental health was at a breaking point. We're a family. We share our burdens. We'll figure out a loan for your school." He looked me in the eye and said the words that broke me. "Family comes first." I stood there paralyzed, watching my father comfort the woman who had just set my future on fire. But then it happened. My dad leaned down to pick up a fallen napkin, and for a split second, Kimberly wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. The tears in her eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, razor-sharp smirk. It was a look of pure triumph. It said, "I won. I took your mother's money, I took your father's loyalty, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it." In that moment, the daughter who followed the rules died. The girl who did the dishes and tutored for free and stayed quiet was gone. A cold, surgical clarity washed over me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a vase. I simply nodded, whispered, "I understand," and walked upstairs. I waited until 2 a.m. I crept into the guest suite Kimberly used as her meditation room. I knew she was a creature of habit and vanity. She had an old iPad she used for her spiritual journaling, and I knew she hadn't changed the passcode from her birthday, 0412. I sat on the floor in the dark, the blue light of the screen reflecting in my eyes. I didn't find trauma journals. I found a treasure trove of filth. I found a folder in her hidden photos labeled Solace Photos. They weren't from a mountain retreat. There were no meditation cushions or monks. There were photos of Kimberly in a white string bikini on a yacht in St. Bart's, And standing next to her, his hand firmly on her waist, was a man I recognized from her old Facebook posts. Marcus, the toxic ex-boyfriend she claimed had ruined her life. I checked the timestamps. They were taken during the exact weeks she was supposedly healing her soul in the Arizona mountains. My mother's tuition money hadn't bought a spiritual awakening. It had bought a month-long honeymoon for my father's wife and her lover. I didn't just find photos, I found the receipts for the entire lie. While Kimberly slept soundly down the hall, I was building a digital gallows. First, I accessed the business registry for Ascended Solace LLC. Just as I suspected, the company wasn't a wellness center. It was a shell corporation registered to a P.O. box in Delaware, with Marcus listed as the sole director. She wasn't just spending my money, she was laundering it directly into her lover's pockets. Next, I went for the juggernaut, my father's office. I knew he kept a copy of their pre-nuptial agreement in his fireproof safe. I've known the code since I was 10. It was my mother's birthday. I pulled out the thick stack of papers and flipped to section 8.2. There it was, highlighted in my mind like a neon sign. Financial infidelity or theft of non-marital assets results in a total forfeiture of alimony and immediate vacation of the marital home. Kimberly had been so confident in her control over my dad that she forgot the very document meant to protect him. I spent the rest of the night downloading every text message, every yacht selfie, and every bank transfer onto a thumb drive. I even found a recorded call on her iPad where she laughed with Marcus, calling my dad the grieving ATM. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart was a block of ice. I didn't want a refund anymore. I wanted her to watch her world turn to ash, just like she did to mine. The timing was poetic. 3 days later was my father and Kimberly's 5th anniversary. They were hosting a recommitment gala at the local country club for 100 of the town's most influential people. Kimberly was glowing in a $4,000 silk gown, likely bought with the last of my mother's interest. When I volunteered to manage the life lessons slideshow, she patted my cheek and called me a sweet, forgiving girl. The room was filled with the clinking of crystal and the smell of expensive lilies. My dad stood up, his voice thick with emotion, as he started to thank Kimberly for saving him from the darkness. That was my cue. I hit play. The screen didn't show wedding photos. It showed the bank statement, the $50,000 drain, in giant, glowing red numbers. Then came the metadata stamped photos of Kimberly and Marcus on the yacht in St. Bart's, followed by the text messages where she called my father a clueless, grieving ATM. The final slide was a high-definition scan of Section 8.2 of the prenup. The silence was deafening. I watched the wine glass slip from Kimberly's hand and shatter on the marble floor. My father didn't scream. He didn't even look at her. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, the fog in his eyes cleared. He walked to the microphone, his voice cold as the grave, and said, "The party is over. Kimberly, your bags are already on the curb. Don't be there when I get home." The karma was absolute. Because the theft involved a protected trust, Kimberly wasn't just divorced. She was indicted for grand larceny and wire fraud. She's currently trading her silk gowns for a state-issued jumpsuit. My father sold her jewelry and the luxury SUV he'd bought her to replenish every cent of my mother's fund. Today, I'm sitting in my dorm at Stanford. The sun is hitting my mother's ring on my finger, and for the first time, I'm not a ghost. I'm exactly who she wanted me to be. It's a powerful reminder that silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just the calm before a necessary storm. But looking back at Sienna's journey, I have to ask you, who was truly at fault here? Was it just Kimberly's greed, or did Robert's peace at any price mentality create the perfect environment for this betrayal to happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please keep in mind that this video was a fictional dramatization created for the purpose of societal reform and awareness. We share these stories to shine a light on the dark realities of financial abuse and family betrayal so that you can recognize the warning signs and protect your own legacy. Please do not repeat the negative behaviors or the calculated schemes shown in this story in your real life. We want you to choose the path of integrity and open communication before things reach a breaking point. If you found value in this lesson today, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to join us for our daily stories of justice and growth.